Hi everybody, Dave Prowse here with a video on where to find the answers to computer technology questions and problems. This video is aimed at my readers and students and for people that are new to the technology field. The methods within this video have been developed using my own analysis and from methods that other people use and what has worked best for me over 20 years in the computer field. So this is more of a generic video, but it can be applied to most types of technology questions. It's specifically suited to technology that incorporates mainstream computing systems, PCs, laptops, mobile devices, smartphones, that type of thing. Whatever you want to call a computer, but mainstream computers and devices. But again, it can be applied to a lot of other types of technology as well. Now, before we get into where to find the answers, remember this. You have to accurately state your question or clearly define the problem at hand. And, this can be difficult. It can be difficult finding an answer if you're not 100% clear on what the question is. This might require that you actually write stuff down or type things or whatever. And this is a good idea whenever you're planning technology, installing, and especially troubleshooting technology. So with that out of the way, let's discuss several good places to go to find the answers. And I break it down into 5 categories. So it all starts with technical documentation. Printed manuals and digital manuals are your friends. Use them. For example, here's a motherboard manual. You need to use these types of things when you're installing and configuring and updating and troubleshooting. So definitely use printed manuals and digital manuals that come with whatever your devices are or computers are. Now, help systems are good too. For example, embedded help systems. I'm in PowerPoint right now. If I press the F1 key, we'll get the embedded slideshow help, which gives all the shortcuts that you can use on the keyboard. This is a gold mine right here. And lots of other help topics. So F1 you can use with most applications and also for operating systems as well. Also, you might find an extra help window pane. You might be working in Windows Explorer or File Explorer, and you get that extra window pane that gives you details, or you can enable that. Or you might see something like this router screen, where the configuration is on the left, and then the help information for that configuration is on the right. Also, company documentation. This might include guidelines. It might include help systems, trouble ticketing systems, forums, and written policies. Most companies have written policies of some sort that dictate how you should do what you do. And some companies take it even a step further, adhering to standards such as ISO. So these are things that you should familiarize yourself with and review them periodically. Now, whatever the type of documentation, RTM, read the manual. I say this all the time. Make sure that you read the manual. If you have something like this Asus motherboard manual, you're building a system, you should go through it. You should go through all the pages, or at least scan through it and tab the pages that are going to be the most important for you. And so that's RTM, read the manual, very important. Always make sure that your device or software comes with some type of documentation. If the device comes with no docs, then the chances are that tech support isn't so good either. They kind of go hand in hand, support and documentation. So you want to try to get devices and software that has good support, has good documentation. The thing about it is it might be a cheap device, but you get what you pay for in most cases. And, a lot of times that means a lack of support, a lack of documentation, which could be a problem for you when troubleshooting or configuring the device, or even just when you're installing it. So make sure that the device or software comes with documentation. And some companies are better at documentation than others. For example, Intel is very good at their documentation, but other companies maybe not so good. And that's just from my experience. Some companies are better at documentation than others, so watch out for that. And over time, you should create your own documentation. This really helps you to focus on what you do. The act of writing or typing information and making your documentation helps you to learn more and remember more. But also it acts as a record. As you get more experienced, it may take some time to search your brain for, the information that you require. And that's where documentation can come in really handy. And really not just for you, also for other people on your team. They can look back at your documentation in the future to see what you did. My recommendation is to use something like OneNote or Evernote, some type of virtual notebook system. And, I'm at the point now where I'm documenting 20 years of experience in the form of blogging and videos and books and audio recordings. I do this for my readers and watchers and students. And using some kind of virtual notebook tool makes it a lot easier. Everything can be divvied up into projects. And I actually use this for companies that I consult for as well. Any project that I'm going to do gets a new section of the notebook. And that all can be broken down into different pages. And it's really easily searchable. And you can drag and drop links and videos and images and whatever you need to show that whole project. So over time, you should definitely create your own documentation. Can really help you to be more organized. And I'm using OneNote 2016, which is part of the 2016 Office. There's a free version of it also, which is pretty good. And as I mentioned, Evernote is another one. And look around, see what's best for you, what best suits your needs. Now, let's not forget about books, all kinds of books out there that you want to have. These can act as great pieces of documentation as well. If you're a PC person, you might be into upgrading and repairing PCs, the Bible of PCs, basically. Or if you're into programming, you might want this PHP book or another PHP book. Or if you're into security, you should definitely have a copy of Applied Cryptography. So lots of options for books, and that's one portion of technical documentation as well. So that's the biggest one by far. Documentation is the best when it comes to installing and configuring and troubleshooting problems. So make sure you use that. But it's not the only option out there. So moving on to number 2, go to the source. Go to the source. You want to go to manufacturers' websites. For example, Intel or Asus or Cisco or Microsoft or Apple or whatever. Always go to the source. Don't guess. Don't go to just wherever. You shouldn't want to do Google searching first. You should want to go to the source. Who built the device, the manufacturer, who wrote the software. Go there first to get your information. Also, manufacturer tech support. For example, Microsoft tech support, they have their TechNet, and Cisco has a whole built-in library on their website of tons of information. And generally, if you buy a good product, you'll get tech support, and they'll allow you to call them and, find out the answers to your questions. And it'll be broken into different levels, some type of hierarchy. So you want to make use of that. A lot of these companies have a lot of good tech support people, and they deal with the product all the time. That's what they do. So it makes sense for you to go to them instead of spinning your wheels. Also, standardization bodies. If it's something that's less product-oriented and more technology-oriented, then you might want to go to a standardization body. For example, the IEEE or IANA or the TIA-EIA or Request for Comments, RFCs. Those are all great places to go to get information about a technology as opposed to a device or software. Now, finally, I don't know if I could call these sources, so to speak, but there's Wikipedia, and then you have Googling. And, there's good and bad with Wikipedia, and Google can be a bane or a boon. It could be good or bad for you. It really depends on what you're searching for, and how good you are at searching, and what's out there. It's all random. Now, here's the thing about Wikipedia. Here's an example. A lot of times there is debatable content because the information could be written by anyone. And, when it comes to these encyclopedic type websites, like Wikipedia and others, you never really know exactly what you're going to get, and you never really know who was looking over that information. And it can be debatable because things can be taken in different contexts. So, for example, Cat5 cable is a good one. Cat5 cable is shown in a link here as suitable for 1000 base T networks. But, when you really think about it, what is Cat5? Cat5 is a 100 megahertz cable, and with standard encoding at 1 bit per cycle, you get 100 megabits per second. So how is it really suitable for 1000 base T? I mean, it works. If you connect it, it actually functions, but you're not going to get 1000 megabits per second, nor are you probably going to get that with, say, Cat6 or Cat6A. But, it's what's really suitable to me to get higher speeds and to get, video flowing through to your computer and streaming information and whatever. What you really need is Cat5e or higher for 1000 base T networks. But see, that's where you can kind of get into an argument about this, and it's all how you take it into context. How has the Cat5 cable been modified? What software is encapsulating information differently or compressing information differently? You can get a lot of different viewpoints on this, and it could be debatable at best. So Wikipedia can be a bit of a problem. And once again, really the answers for that is to go to the manufacturers, go to the standardization bodies to get the information. Now, sometimes I will use Wikipedia. If I can't find the information I'm looking for, I'll see if there's a good article on Wikipedia and go right to the bottom and see what references were cited and click those links and see what's up with those. But it all depends. Now, Googling can be good. Sometimes you can find the answer like that, but sometimes you don't. And sometimes you get a bunch of misinformation. And that's why Googling can be good, but you shouldn't really rely on it as your first source all the time, and you really shouldn't, you really got to check the results, let's put it that way. Now, what you want to do is use the right search engine. Big search engines might be good, like Google or Bing or Yahoo or whatever, but you might find over time that you get better results for your particular type of technology by using a different search engine like ask.com or Excite or Lycos. Or perhaps if you're dealing with a lot of scientific or computational type searches, you could go to Wolfram Alpha. For secure searching, you might use DuckDuckGo. And so there's a lot of possibilities there. And of course, some might give more pertinent information than others. So it's kind of a learning process, and it all depends on what your center of technology is. Third on the list is people. Ask real people. For example, people you work with. And, one of the best places to go is other smart techs in your department. That's a great place to go. Also, your manager might have the answers you're looking for. You need to keep in mind that you don't know everything. I don't know everything. And sometimes we have to escalate it to the next level. Also, professors, instructors. If you've ever taken classes, it's a good idea to keep in touch with instructors or professors if they know their stuff, because they could possibly help you in the future. Or if you're taking class currently, use them as a resource to get answers. And then a circle of tech friends. And this is something I started developing back in the 90s. Circle of tech friends. I realized early on in technology that there was just way too much to know. There was no way to know all of it. And the only way to survive would be to specialize in, one or maybe several aspects of technology. Now, with that in mind, what happens when you encounter something that you don't know too much about? Well, the circle of tech friends can really help with that. And in these cases, sometimes people are the best place to go to first. For example, let's see, okay, I have used Exchange Server. I can install it. I can set up mailboxes. I can do some basic security. But when it comes to some real specific stuff in Exchange Server, I'm not really going to know what to do with it. And it could be time consuming searching for the answer on the Microsoft TechNet or elsewhere. So I have a friend that I've met a while back who is an Exchange expert. And it's one of 3 servers that this person deals with. And so I can go to that person, and you could have your circle of tech friends set up in Facebook or instant messaging or on your phone in your contacts or your Rolodex or whatever it is you kids use today. But use the circle of tech friends. And, it's great because I can get the answers I'm looking for Exchange or whatever else that I don't have tons of knowledge about, and hopefully get that answer from one of the tech friends quickly and efficiently. And that does happen quite often. And it goes 2 ways. This is a give and take type thing. That Exchange person might have a question for me about, say, Pro Tools, because I record with that. All my audio goes through Pro Tools. And perhaps I can answer that question for them. So it goes back and forth. And so sometimes people are the best place to go to first. And especially if your company uses, say, custom software or custom hardware, your company is going to be the people who know about it best. So keep that in mind. Ask real people. Next on the list, secondary sources. And you might use YouTube to answer your questions or other do-it-yourself sources. Now, this gets to the next level. We mentioned sometimes Google can be an issue. Sometimes you get the right information, sometimes you don't. YouTube and other video type sources, you're going to get a lot more misinformation or just outright garbage. So you have to be careful with that. You have to modify your searches. You have to watch who you're looking into. But it can be helpful to get some hands-on information. That's why I put a bunch of videos of what I do on YouTube to support my books and other videos, so people can see hands-on what I'm doing step by step. So it can be helpful. But also forums. Join forums. For example, Tom's Hardware for motherboards or for whatever hardware you're dealing with your PC. Great place to go. Or Stack Overflow for programming. Find good forums that are out there, and you may find that your question has already been answered. There's, I don't know, what is it, X billion people on the planet. So chances are your question has been thought up, dreamed up, asked, answered, done. So learn how to search through forums to get the answers you're looking for. And if it's not there, learn how to ask the question in a concise manner, in a polite way, and you'll get answers fairly quickly. Once again, it's a two-way street. If you ask some questions, you should go back on and try to answer some questions if you can. So definitely look into secondary sources such as YouTube or forums and so on. And finally, dig deep. Sometimes you simply have to come up with the answer, and you have to do it on your own because the answer just isn't out there. It's an interesting moment when you realize, hey, I can't find the answer. It's not there. I have to figure it out. Now, in these situations, you have to use your creativity to devise a solution. And this is where things get really interesting. I consider it more of an art at that point. It goes beyond science. It goes beyond technology. It becomes an art. And it's where the real fun starts in technology, in my opinion. And this is a way of increasing your level of experience and knowledge. To me, treading into the unknown is what being human is all about. And especially if you're working with technology, it's the unknown that makes it interesting. So you might need some techniques that you wouldn't normally use. You've got to get into pure investigation, pure analysis, and then you might have to go further. Speculation. You really have to speculate on what the possible answers could be and really think, really brainstorm. You might even need to do meditation. Who knows? But finally, you'll get answers. And it can be really exciting. So you want to enjoy those moments. One time I was working on server. This was a ways back, early 2000s. I remember this, working on server 2003. And there was a problem with RAS, and a connection couldn't be made over the into the domain from a wide area network. An issue that shouldn't have been a problem because it looked like we were doing everything correctly. And so couldn't figure out the answer. Called up Microsoft Tech Support because you get free case studies with server, at the time at least. And level 1 had no idea. Level 2 was like, not too sure about it. Finally got to level 3 support, and that's it. Once you get to level 3, that they either have to figure out the answer or, you're pretty much done. Level 3 was stumped after talking to them for about 10 or 15 minutes. And, these people work with this stuff all the time. They are masters. They deal with this software all day, every day. And so they have virtual machines running, and they can test everything that you're talking about in real time as you're talking to them. And so, and they couldn't figure out the problem. And so it kind of got to the Sherlock Holmes side of things where, you eliminate all other factors and whatever remains must be the truth. Or when you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth, or whatever the quotes are for that. But it's true. It is actually true. And, you make your list of troubleshooting and, what possible things could have gone wrong. And you start with the most likely and you go down into less and less and less likely. And I was at the bottom of the list. I was coming up with some weird stuff like, hey, maybe it wasn't programmed right. And maybe what is going on here is just a programming error. And not to say that, this is common, but because, programmers from Microsoft and other companies are awesome, and there's tons of them, and they know their stuff. But sometimes mistakes happen for whatever reason. And so when I started thinking that way, I started looking at the problem, and it was an actual registry key deep in the registry. And I found the key that had to be modified for what I needed for the incoming traffic through RAS. And the key was stored in something called local. The entry was stored in a subkey called local. And there was another subkey called domain, which was empty. And this was super deep in the registry. And I said, hey, what if we moved that entry to the domain subkey? And I did that, and of course backed up the registry and did this off hours and all that stuff, because this was a working server. But once I did that, everything worked. It was like a light switch. And, I got back with Microsoft Tech Support and told them about it, and actually released an article about it on TechNet. I don't know if anybody ever read that, but whatever, because this was a very rare thing that nobody had ever heard of. But because there was a certain type of traffic that needed to go through the RS server to the domain and whatever. But the thing is that thinking it through, went through all the most likely, went to the less likely, and then the least likely, however improbable. And it was improbable, but then it turned out to be the answer. So at the risk of sounding like an 80s guy, you sometimes need to think outside the box. And of course, Sherlock Holmes was known to use a 7% solution. Not that I'm condoning that or anything, but sometimes you have to go that extra mile. Whatever it is, you have to change your habits, maybe perform yoga. I don't know, whatever it is that you have to do to get the answers. But it's a really cool time when this type of thing happens. Really document these instances, because the experience you can gain from them can be enormous. I remember that particular experience with the server and looking back at the documentation saying, wow, this was my thought process and it was good, but I could streamline it like this. And now I know what to look for in the future with certain problems like this with Microsoft, and how to deal with their tech support at level 3, and how to work on it myself and come up with the really rare possibilities, the improbable, and how to test those. So really document those instances. They can be very helpful. And so dig deep to find the answers. So that's the key. Use all of these things to aid you whenever you're planning, installing, configuring, or troubleshooting technology. But most of all, always go back to the documentation first. That's usually going to be your best bet. Find the answer on your own within the documentation quickly. And if not, use the other concepts that we talked about. But keep in mind that sometimes people are the best place to go to first. And you never know. Maybe Google might be the best place to go to first. Again, it depends on what you're working with, what your technology center is, and what the question is as well. But usually you want to go back to the documentation first. And oftentimes this will offer the quickest and most efficient solution. So that's it. Long video. That's it for this video. Again, this is more of a generic video, and it's for, my readers and watchers and people who are new to technology, but just about anybody can apply it if you wish. So I'm Dave Prowse. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me at my website, www.davidlprowse.com. If you like the video, thumbs it up, subscribe, whatever. Contact me at my website and say hello. And that's it. Dave Prowse signing off. Have a good day.